Hello everyone, this is Ed Dentzel, host of Unfound. I wonder if you will consider becoming a supporter of this YouTube channel. By pressing the join button below, you can receive, for just 10 cents a day, the video version of the podcast a day early, the Unfound Now episodes a week early, daily video updates from yours truly, and cool emojis to use during the Monday night live show. Please consider it as you watch the following spectacular video. Thanks. Hello everyone, and welcome again to Unfound Now, the monthly series where I cover a very recent disappearance. As you can see from the title, this one will cover the disappearance of Caitlyn Rose Case. She disappeared, I should say her car was found in Choctaw County, Oklahoma on August 5th of 2022. She was driving from Louisiana to Colorado for a new job, and she is 33 years old. So this disappearance, not quite 2 months old, but it seems to be already cold at this point, so I thought it was a good selection for this episode. If you are new to Unfound Now, you might know the podcast but not be familiar with this series, maybe just finding the channel for the first time. You know, on the regular podcast that comes out every Friday, we cover what we might call old disappearances. Any disappearance that is over a year old. The average age of a disappearance covered on the podcast, if you can believe it, is 20 years old. So I started Unfound Now during the summer of 2020 because I wanted to have an opportunity to talk about newer disappearances, ones maybe within just a couple months that have just happened a couple months ago. And so I've been doing that. I think this is episode number 27 or 28, something like that. And many of them have been solved. Unfortunately, nobody has been found alive yet, except for one girl out of Las Vegas. But the reasons I started it, on top of just wanting an opportunity to cover some newer disappearances, is one, publicity. Every disappearance can use some publicity. Unfound's YouTube channel is fairly popular with about 15,000 subscribers. So I'm hoping that somebody will see a video such as this one and be able to come forward with new information. Number two, I use Unfound Now as a learning tool. I am all about disappearance education. And in fact, just within the last week, I was at 2 universities here in Florida talking to criminal justice majors about disappearances. And I love doing that. Just looking into their eyes, talking to them, taking their questions. I love it. And so I feel like I'm passing along important information to these people, many of whom will become police officers or working for the FBI or become sheriffs. And I'm hoping I can have an effect on them when I talk to them. So education is very important to me. So we try to use a lot of things we've learned over the last 6 years of Unfound and apply it to the disappearance that is being covered here on Unfound Now. And then number 3, I thought that looking back 2 years ago when this series got started, I thought all of you might find it interesting to see how we at Unfound analyze new disappearances when they come out in the news. Because really, we find out about them just like all of you do. On a website, on a Facebook page. Maybe sometimes I will get an email from somebody, but other than that, I find out about new disappearances just like the rest of you. So I thought that maybe it would be helpful to all of you if you could see what goes on in my mind, what goes on in my assistants' minds when we see a disappearance for the first time, especially a very new one. So we're now going to go to the map. I'm guessing you probably could have predicted that, given that she was driving from Louisiana to Colorado. Her car is found in Oklahoma. We're going to go over that, or I'm going to go over that. I'm going to make some comments about that route, show you a few different things there, read a couple articles. And then when you see me on the screen again, I will be going through 3 educational points for this episode. Number one, we always start with the person. Number two, phones help, but. And number three, only criminals act logically. All right, so I'm going to go to the map. And when I come back, I'll go through those 3 points in much more depth. Okay, let's take a look. Actually, we're going to be taking a look at two different maps. And I'm going to kind of toggle back and forth between them. One is the one you're looking at right now, which is the map from Houma, Louisiana, where she was starting, and then way down in the bottom right-hand corner, let me back this up, way in the bottom right-hand corner. And then up in the left-hand corner is where she was eventually supposed to be going. That is Black Hawk, Colorado. And all those places in between are all the cities that have been mentioned in the article that I'm going to read right now. Then I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And then once again, I have another map that I would like you to take a look at. Caitlyn Case, I'm going to read this couple articles regarding all of this. Caitlyn Case was traveling from Houma, Louisiana, to Colorado, up here in the left-hand corner. She left on August 4th. During Case's last call with her father, she was traveling northbound on Highway 271 in the Bogota, Texas area, which, as you can see, is right there. And I will zoom in on that for you to show you that. And so this is Route 271 right up here, going up to Bogota, Bogota, Texas, right there. So she'll be coming up here, and then this road going toward Bogota. So cell phone towers. So once again, reading that again. During Case's last call with her father, she was traveling northbound on Highway 271 in the Bogota, Texas area. Cell tower hits after the call indicated that she continued north on Highway 271 toward Paris, Texas, which is right there. And her arrival time in Paris, her estimated arrival time in Paris would have been approximately 1,800 hours. So that is 6 p.m. in citizen time. At 21:17, though, so 3 hours and 17 minutes after that, a license plate reader captures her leaving Paris in a northwesterly direction on FM 79. So that's just a local road. But I'm going to show you where that is, zooming in on this direction. This is right here. So this is 79 going up in this. Of course, this is not on the blue, but this is 79, this little white line over here on the side. A short time later, her cell phone begins hitting towers in Choctaw County, Oklahoma. And so that's where this is, where Frogville is right there, as you can see. That is Choctaw. So once again, she was kind of over here, going this direction, then somehow her phone pings over there. And then a short time later, okay, on August 12th, though, so a week after this disappearance, Caitlyn Case's vehicle was located in a rural area along a steep embankment along the Kiamichi River near Frogville, Oklahoma. That is why I put Frogville on the map. This article states, I'm not so sure, but it says, it is believed that someone other than Case attempted to dispose of the vehicle in the river. Okay. So that is just somebody's opinion. That's not factual. I don't know if there's any facts to support that or not. All right, so I'm going to read another article, kind of starting at the beginning, giving you the wide view again. And then, once again, kind of zoom in. And then once again, I'm going to keep saying once again. I will then show you this other map. The Oklahoma is a different article. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, OSBI, has been requested to assist in a multi-state missing persons investigation. On or about August 4th, 2022, 33-year-old Caitlyn Rose left Houma, Louisiana, en route to Colorado. Case communicated with her family members during her trip until they lost contact with her on August 5th. At that point, she was traveling on Highway 271 between Paris, Texas, and Hugo, Oklahoma. Now, this kind of does conflict with the other piece of information, because it's obvious that she was not on. This is Paris right here. Here is Oklahoma, but I already told you she was going off on a road like this way up to the northwest. She was not on Route 71, which would have been taking her up on, essentially that blue line is Route 271. And Hugo, Oklahoma is up here. So I'm not sure what to make of that. So Case's vehicle, a 2006 black GMC Envoy with Louisiana plates 957 FDO, was located along the banks of the Kiamichi River in a rural area south of Fort Towson, Oklahoma. That's essentially Frogville, right in this area. Case has no contacts in southern Oklahoma, and her whereabouts are unknown. Based upon the current investigation, law enforcement is aware the Case traveled through North Texas, stopping at convenience stores in Mount Pleasant. So I'm going to blow this up again or zoom this out again for you to show you this, if this makes any sense whatsoever. Law enforcement is aware the Case traveled through North Texas, stopping at convenience stores in Mount Pleasant, Gladewater, Louisville, Gainesville, and then Paris, which is right in this area. It's right there, although the name is not there. Between August 4th and 5th. Not sure what she was doing there. Once again, as one of the educational points for this shows, we don't try to get in the heads of missing people. Case is described as being 5'5", 140 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. She was wearing a black spaghetti strapped house top, black spaghetti strap style top. Say that 3 times fast. Light blue jeans and red tennis shoes. All right. All right, so I think just looking at this map, maybe you can tell that there just seems to be something up here. Of course, we cannot deny what the phone says, where she was in these different areas of Gladewater, Mount Pleasant, Louisville, Gainesville, all of this area. But it doesn't seem, at least, to be the most direct way to get from Louisiana to Colorado. We now take a look at a different map, which is essentially the same map, but without all those locations. Now, see, what is this map? Let me move this a little bit. This is a map, if you just put in to the Google machine, this is the map that it gives you if you're trying the most efficient route between Houma and Black Hawk, Colorado, up here. Now, I know this area. This is when I drove to Amarillo. This is Amarillo right there. When I went to the Tom Brown get-together 3 years ago in Amarillo, this is exactly, I came over this way from Florida, took this exact route the whole way to Amarillo right there. So I know this area, having been on it before, and is actually, I think this is the way I traveled when I moved from Las Vegas to Florida. I think I was going this direction on that highway. So this is what Google says is the most efficient route between those locations. Now, of course, there are these gray area lines, which are secondary routes in case there are problems. Of course, if there's some big backup, some huge wreck that's going to delay people for hours, then you might want to think about taking this route or this route. But you can see the differences in time and in distance. If you go the most efficient route, it's 19 hours and 50 minutes. Obviously, it's a long drive. But if you take the way she was going, it's an additional 80 miles and approximately 35 minutes more. Now, maybe in a 20-hour drive, that doesn't mean anything, but I can tell you that I usually just take the most efficient way. Now, maybe what could have been on her mind is that this way would have tolls, this way would not. So that's something maybe to at least consider. But I'm going to show you, look at that, and then look at this. And I'll zoom it out. This is the most efficient way. This is the way these are all the points where her phone pinged. This is the most efficient direction. This is the way where all the phones pinged. Perceptually, it seems something was going on here. Something. I would also say something else, is that given that we know all of these pings at these different places, first of all, allow me to say that's a lot of stops at convenience stores, as it said in the article. That's a lot of stops. Stop doing that. At convenience stores for any trip. And it also gives the perception is that, looking at that she went right into downtown Dallas, like Louisville, and then came out looking at this. Because, once again, if you're doing the most efficient route, it's to come up here, go this direction, and go this way. Not to go this way. You can go this way. It's longer in both time and mileage. You avoid the tolls. Maybe that's worth something to you. But this is the most efficient route, staying on the highways, not going off on any secondary roads. And also, my perception is that the way I look at this map and what she said in her phone call to her family, it just doesn't seem like she was telling them the truth. And I get into that a little later. I will get into that a little later with Mandy Stokes, who was talking on the phone with her boyfriend and told him something, and that didn't end up to be true either. So we have some experience here, and that's not the only example I probably could have used for this video of people talking on cell phones and saying they're in one place when they're really someplace else. That's the perception I have, that she said she was on 271 going toward, as they said in this, toward Paris, Texas. But really, if all these points are to be true, she was actually coming into Paris, Texas from this side, which would not have been 271. In addition, it says here she was traveling northbound on highways 271 in the Bogota, Texas area. Well, I don't think that there are any pings showing she was ever in that area. We hear pings about Gladewater and Mount Pleasant and Louisville and Gainesville. We don't hear anything about any pings in the Bogota area. So that's something to think about as well. So once again, I want to show you this map comparison one more time. There's the map there. That's the efficient map. These are all the pings for her disappearance. So that concludes the map section of this episode. And I'm back. Before I get into those educational points, allow me to remind you to subscribe to this channel. It's the button right down there. Make it nice and easy for all of you. Once you subscribe, please hit the bell button so you will be alerted when videos such as this one are posted. You also get alerted when I do the live show on Monday nights. Also, you might consider joining this channel. That's the join button down there. In fact, right at the beginning of this video, there was a little trailer for that. You get a lot of cool stuff for the low price of 10 cents a day. Yes, $3 a month. You get some other things that everybody else doesn't get. I think it's a really good deal. So hit the join button. That does not automatically sign you up. Hitting the join button, you will get to read the things you will get before you may have to make a final decision. But hit that join button and at least consider it. I would appreciate it. Also, you can support the program at patreon.com /Unfound and also PayPal, paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. All right, let's go down to these educational points. As I've stated many times before, I do not do this off the top of my head. Even the presentations I do to students, even though I've done those many times now, I still use the PowerPoint up there on the screen. So if you see me looking to my left, your right, it's because I have my notes on my other laptop right here. So let's go to number 1. We always start with a person. This is something new that I've added to the presentations that I do to college students. This is not to brag. This is all I do are disappearances. If you are new to me, if you are new to Unfound, this is all I do. I do not have another job. I work on this podcast. I work on missing persons cases all the time. It's all I do. And so when you do that for 6 years, such as like I have, which very few people have done ever, you get to realize that disappearances are about people. And it's one of the reasons that on the interviews that I do for the podcast that comes out every Friday, we spend a lot of time talking about the person. We spend 45 minutes just on the person before we ever get to the details of the disappearance that day or the day before, because it is important. And more I'm seeing that disappearances are not about locations and timelines and pings and everything else. Those things are certainly important. But really, disappearances are about people. Knowing that person. What situation was that person in? What choices were that person making? What choices was that person making? What were they choosing to do with their lives? Is way more important than a lot of those facts. Now, those facts are certainly important in trying to figure out what happened, but disappearances are about people. And it's gotten to the point where if you just tell me the demographics of a person, the age, the job, did they have any addictions, what kind of relationship were they in, things like that, I probably don't even need to know what went on during the day of the disappearance. I could probably pretty well guess the kind of disappearance that it is. It's just, once again, you cover 270 disappearances, you get to that point. So when I start looking at Caitlyn, she was moving to Colorado to work at a casino. She was making this drive by herself. She had gone back and forth between Colorado many times. I'm not sure, driving or flying or maybe a mixture of both. But what concerns me more, and this is not, we don't care about people's past. We have to talk about people's past because our pasts are what form us into who we are today. And once again, as I've learned, those choices that people make in their lives usually has a lot to do with why they went missing. Well, I can't ignore that Caitlyn had a driving while intoxicated charge on her record. I also understand, although I've not seen this for myself, but I've read it out there, that she might have had some drug charges as well. I don't know what those drugs were, but that's out there as well. But certainly, anytime a person is driving somewhere and goes missing, and then you see something on that person's record that says driving while intoxicated, DUI. This one was in the 4th degree, which I don't know what that means. It should get your attention. It really, really should. And yes, people who get DUIs get carjacked too. That can happen anytime, but it's certainly something that we have to think about. Now, I will also tell you that we've actually covered 2 Unfound NoW disappearances that are kind of like this. 2 disappearances where people were driving from one state to another, went missing, didn't end up at their final destination, and both of those people were found. There was a young man driving, I think, from North Dakota or Minnesota to, coincidentally, New Orleans, Louisiana. He pulled off to the side of the road in Arkansas, He went missing. It's an episode we must have done maybe 4 or 5 months ago. He was found deceased. He had committed suicide. Very sad. And then the other one, which was an older disappearance, which I think takes us back maybe to one of the first 5 episodes of Unfound Now. There was a woman driving, I think, from Kansas to Georgia or Kansas to Arkansas, something like that. She didn't make a door destination. And eventually she was found in her car, if you can believe it, in one of these shipping containers you might see on a cargo ship or on a train. She'd pulled into it, closed the doors, and left the car running and died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Once again, a suicide. So we have to think about this. Was Caitlyn in the same type of mental situation as these two were? Hard to say. But I think what we're saying here is that when people are driving from one place to another and their car is found or they don't reach that destination, I think the odds are very high that this is probably not something that involves foul play. It certainly could be, but just knowing that maybe could push our thinking in one certain direction. And then you add in this DUI, you add in what can be a very stressful situation from a person moving from one state to another for a job. I know about that. I did that once in my life. All sorts of butterflies, a lot of fear going on upstairs. And in fact, the young man who ended up committing suicide, that's why he was moving to Louisiana for a job. He was trying to start a new life. Unfortunately, it seems something got to him, something in his mentality that did not allow him to reach his destination. So we have to know about these things. Knowing these people can be very important. So these are the things we have to keep in mind about Caitlyn. She's moving. She has a DUI. She seemingly had some drug issues in the past. Moving for a job. I don't know how many people she knew in Colorado, but she was originally from Louisiana. It can be very stressful. Very, very stressful. And some of the other examples, at least from Unfound, the podcast experience, are Crystal Morrison and Tyler North. These are 2 people that disappeared under very different circumstances, but just knowing them, the way we got to know them during those episodes before we ever got into the circumstances, maybe in retrospect, we should have been able to predict what happened. Crystal Morrison, she had a drug problem at one point. She was sick that day. It was 100 degrees in North Carolina. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised that she walked off into the woods and died and was eventually found, unfortunately, many years later. And Tyler North would have been helpful maybe for everybody to know that he was still texting with his ex-wife before he went missing, and he was surely murdered. His remains are found, and his ex-wife and her boyfriend have been charged with his murder. So once again, we can apply that to Caitlyn. What do we know about that person before the disappearance ever happened? Very important. Next, number 2, phones help, but. Now, given, like I said before, that the average age of a disappearance is 20 years old for the podcast, that means we cover a fair amount of disappearances where cell phones are not even a topic. Not even a talk. We may talk the internet, but this would have even been 20 years old. You get back to 2002. This is kind of before MySpace and certainly before Facebook, before Google. And so you really couldn't track somebody on the internet in 2002 or before that, going to like the birth of the internet, maybe around 1995. So I'm used to talking about disappearances where computers and phones are not even a topic. And I'm telling you, it really helps. It really analyzing those types of disappearances can help when you then get to the modern area of all the tracking devices and GPS and everything else in phones that we have today. However, the perception, though, I think in the public is, well, everybody has a phone. Tracking has made solving disappearances easier. Statistically, there's no proof of that. And we're going to, of course, I just talked about in the map video, our phone was picking all these different places, and disappearances still happen today. all the time with people who have cell phones, who still disappear. And it happens just as often as it did. And these disappearances are just as difficult to solve before the cell phones became a thing, before the internet became a thing. Why is that? Well, it just maybe depends on the disappearance, depends on the person. But cell phones certainly give us a better picture. But many people still go missing. It's still tough. And the problem also is that sometimes before that cell phone information comes out, a lot of people, myself included, we start forming opinions on what happened in that disappearance. And then what happens is that maybe the cell phone information does get out to the public. And instead of us tailoring our theory to the phone information, because the phone information is factual, because we've already made up our minds on what happened, we try to get the phone information to fit our theory. Very common. Of course, the wrong way to do that. But this, I think, is also another reason. I think the police do that. I think all types of people who find out about disappearances do this. And a lot of times you'll find that the theory that you think happened, weeks later you find out the phone information doesn't match your theory. I just cannot tell you how much that happens. And so with Caitlyn, yes, her phone went here, her phone went there, but did she have it? It's not tracking her. The pings are tracking her phone. And from Mount Pleasant to Gainesville, it's Gainesville, Texas, not Florida, Gladewater, none of these places are on her way from Louisiana to Colorado. I think I showed that in the map. So the phone pings show, though, that, of course, something wasn't right. But it might not have been her. Maybe it was her. Now, I would remind all of you that there is a well-known disappearance that we've covered. It's kind of like nationally known now, the disappearance of Eric Franks, where surely his phone and his computer, they were both being used by someone else weeks, months. He went missing probably in March. There was someone, like months later, like in the summer of that year, who was surely using his cell phone and his laptop. And Eric was surely murdered. So, I mean, that's a very, very extreme case. On the surface, it doesn't seem like it would be that type of disappearance, but that's what ended up being part of the facts. I will also add in this, there was a disappearance that we also covered, Mandy Stokes, where she was talking on her cell phone, and right in the middle of the conversation, it just cut off. She was talking to her boyfriend, who was proven to be on the exact opposite of the United States. She was up in the Oakland area of California. He was like in New York or Massachusetts, somewhere like that. In the middle of the conversation, the phone cut off. But the confusing thing is that she told her boyfriend that, yeah, she was outside. She was in her car just cruising around the parking lot of her complex talking to him. The problem is that Mandy Stokes' apartment complex did not have a parking lot. You had to park on the street or something like that. This was not one of these sprawling like suburban apartments where there's a lot of parking and it's like gated or something like that. She lived like in an apartment building. It was like just one building with many floors, and there wasn't necessarily any parking lot. So even when people have their cell phones and they disappear in the middle of a conversation, the person may say something that's not true. And I think that we have to think about that, as I already stated with the map, going through the map section, that maybe Caitlyn, despite her saying she was on a certain road heading a certain direction, that doesn't make it true. So once again, to go back to the educational point, phones help, but what if the person's not telling the truth? What if the phone pings go off in this direction and the person, she says she's going in a different direction? How do we even know that the missing person actually had the phone when the pings were going off? Remember these things. So, and number 3, only criminals act logically. This is, once again, this is one of those things that when you cover disappearances as much as I do, something that becomes very evident. One of the biggest problems I think people make when they look at disappearances, they are trying to logically explain the behaviors of the missing person. I sometimes even do that as well. It's very human to do it, very natural. The problem is we don't know what that is in that person's head. All right? Even if we have their phone pings and they're going all over the place like it seems Caitlyn was doing, we try to come up with some logical explanation for it. Well, there may not be any logic to it. Granted, it might be logical in Caitlyn's mind, but we can't be in her mind. She didn't tell anybody she was doing any of this. And so it's wrong of us to try to get in her mind to try to figure out what she was thinking because we don't know. However, instead of thinking about it in terms of the missing person, maybe we should think about it in these terms. For any disappearance, is it logical that somebody caused this person's disappearance? Because even though we can't attach any logic to the missing person, there's always one piece of logic we can attach to a perpetrator, a culprit, a kidnapper, an abductor, a killer, whoever. They always want to get away with it. And so looking at Caitlyn's, that's how we should look at it. Instead of trying to get in her head, try to imagine it. Does it make sense, looking at everything that we know, that a criminal, an abductor, an attacker would go about things like this person or group did? All right? You know, some examples of in Unfound's repertoire. Robin Abrams. She was surely murdered during back in 1990 in Will County, Illinois. Surely murdered. And her car was dumped in a parking lot by a couple of guys who had connections to the Chicago mob. You can go back and listen to that episode. If you're new to Unfound, please go find that episode. It came out in late 2016. That's how long ago, almost 6 years ago. But that's what I mean by logic. They want to get away with the crime. And unfortunately, that is a disappearance that is still unsolved. Robin's never been found. But you can then see the logic of that. What they were trying to do, what were they trying to do? They were trying to make it look like Robin parked her car there. Remember, a criminal's actions are always going to be logical because they want to get away with it. This is a perfect example of that. Likewise, more recently this year, Sue Swedell, she was on her way home, stopped during a severe rainstorm, and she seemingly knew the guy who pulled in not far behind her. And there was a witness saying, yes, she got out of her car, talked to this guy in this other car, then willingly got into the car with him. So we don't know, was she stalked? Was she followed? But once again, we can look at this and say, that person, whoever took Sue, acted in a logical way. He was following her. He wanted to abduct her. And so he followed her into that parking lot and said the right thing to her, and she left. Now, from the opposite point of view, why would Sue? We can't look at Sue's actions because no matter what he would have said, it just doesn't seem to make any sense that she would get in a car, even if it was someone she knew, if you really, really think about it. But it certainly is logical for an abductor, a kidnapper, a killer to try to get somebody, a Sue, a Jane Doe, or anybody else, into his car. So getting back to Caitlyn's, that's what I will ask you. Can't get into her actions, but when you look at all of the other facts, are these things that seem illogical? Is this how somebody would really, really go about abducting anybody and then putting the car where it was eventually found? You have to really, really think about that. Okay, so once again, going back to the 3 educational points. We always start with a person looking at Caitlyn. Number 2, phones help, but they are not a cure-all. Disappearances still happen in this area of people being followed all over the place. With Caitlyn, same thing. We're here almost 2 months later. She is still missing, despite obviously somebody obviously has all these pings and information, phone information. And number 3, only criminals act logically. Looking at her disappearance, can we say logically that somebody would actually go about it this way? So getting to some of my analysis before I finish this video, as I already stated, this is at least the third disappearance that I've covered like this on Unfound Now, and I've only covered 20-some disappearances for Unfound Now, whereas the regular podcasts were up to almost 270. People driving places, and as I stated, in those other 2 that I already mentioned, there was no foul play. There is not even a suspicion of foul play. Both of those people, unfortunately, committed suicide, but different means, different demographics, older woman, young man, going different places in their lives, and still they committed suicide for some reason. Suicide for both of them. I will tell you, looking at Caitlyn's disappearance, that hers is very much like theirs. To me, it is very, very highly unlikely that somebody abducted her or carjacked her or anything like that. I just have a hard time understanding why somebody, or even a group, would get her at a gas station. I understand there is a picture of her getting gas, but I think if it showed her being abducted, would know that by now. But if she stopped and got abducted or in Texas, I mean, where are they going in Choctaw County, Oklahoma, next to that river? What exactly was somebody thinking? Because you have to think of it this way. They could have parked their car anywhere. Now, I know what you may say, well, they were parking out of the way. Well, there's a lot of out-of-the-way places in Texas, too. And it's really not on the way anywhere. Being out there, dumping that car, it's only going to make somebody suspicious if they're seen going in and out. I would be hard-pressed to remember a disappearance that was like this one, where somebody took a car and went so far out of the way to dump it. And then it's hard to understand what exactly was the plan. Like I said, criminals act logically. What they should have done instead, I've brought this up before in analyzing disappearances, if you really want to make a car disappear, you either really, really make it disappear, like pushing it into a lake, or you park it amongst many, many, many other cars, like in a parking garage or in a Walmart parking lot, someplace like that. You don't do what they did, if that's what happened, and I don't believe that happened. I happen to believe that Caitlyn left that car there herself. The DUI charge is a big red flag to me. It could mean that this is a habit that she had. We talked about these drug issues. That did she get on the road and did she decide to pop something to keep her awake or something like that? And the truth is, you never know what kind of effect those drugs are going to have on your mind. No matter how many times you've taken them, 100 times, 101st time can make you do things you never thought you'd be able to do. I've never done anything like that, but I surely have been told about it, and I've surely read about it. So I think what I'm also saying is that I'm not convinced that she planned to go missing. I don't know if she actually planned on the way from Louisiana to Colorado to do what I think she did to herself. But something happened along the way that's what she chose to do. Now, I will tell you in the other 2 disappearances, for the young man who ended up killing himself, I don't know if he planned to do that when he started out driving south to Louisiana. Whereas it's fairly clear with the woman who killed herself in the container that I think that was her plan all along. So, but with Caitlyn's, I'm not convinced that she planned to do this. This more feels like the young man who unfortunately killed himself in Arkansas. So that is this Unfound Now, the disappearance of Caitlyn Rose Case. Of course, hope that she is found alive as soon as possible. I think the facts probably state that she won't be, but we're always hopeful here at Unfound. So appreciate you watching. Please subscribe, like this video, and you will see me again next month. Thanks for watching.